Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Rudd's Room. This week's kind of exciting. It's going to be a little bit different. I don't know if it's exciting. It's exciting to me. Typically, the way I do these is I use the IGA website, things I've learned through the news, through Facebook, et cetera, to try to give you updates on what is going on at the State House. This week, I got a hold of some audio footage from a town hall in Jay County. This one was hosted by the Indiana Farm Bureau. This one is typically closed to members only. I asked all three of the legislators who were participating in this event through email if they could please let me know if it was open to the public. None of the three responded to me. However, someone I do know, or someone someone I know participated. They showed up. They got the audio recording and said it was okay for me to share it with everyone. So I will be sharing that audio with you. So I won't keep you too long. The three legislators who participated in it were State Senator Travis Holdman, State Representative Matt Lehman, and State Representative John Prescott. So the three of them all participated in this. And they gave their updates, talked about their bills, answered some questions. The audio is a little tough to hear, but it is what it is. They typically don't like to be on video or audio recording. We just have an audio recording here. I'm very appreciative of the person who provided this to me because the best we can get. We generally have a hard time with Representative Prescott in particular, getting him to give us any kind of updates in writing or on video or anything like that. So this is pretty good to have. So we'll go ahead and play this. I will probably come back in a later video, perhaps this weekend, to kind of update further, and I might touch on some of these things. I need to listen to this again myself. I listened to it once for editing and kind of skip back through some parts, but I really need to kind of digest it, and then I'll probably do another video next week kind of updating you, talking about what was said in the meeting, and also some more updates on some bills of interest to me. So without further ado, I will stop wasting time, and here is the audio from the February 4th, 2023 legislative update in Jay County, Indiana.
I don't want pictures of all the sides. You go first. Let me go first, and then I'll try to bash everything that I say. That's kind of how it works. Somebody's asked me if I'm a Purdue or IU fan today, of all days. Thank you very much. I have a law degree from IU, and my son went to Purdue. I spent more for his aviation degree at Purdue than I did on my law degree. That tells you something about the time and place and the sorts of things. After that first year of aviation training, I told my wife, I think we bought an airplane. That first year, it was pretty crazy. Let me just tell you a little bit about what's going on. February the 28th, it will be our third reading deadline. That means that all the bills that are filed in the Senate have to be out and clear at the House on midnight on the 28th of February. So things will start to heat up here in the next week or so on the fast track. Bills that have been filed that have a fiscal impact of more than $100,000 have to be recommitted either to my committee, the Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee, or to Appropriations Committee. And so those are starting to float out rather quickly here in the next week, and there's a deadline on that, which basically backs up to about 10 days prior to that 28th of February date, that things have to move quickly. Just to talk a little bit about reserve, we feel like that there's a bit of misinformation out there about how much money we have in reserve at the state level. Frankly, and it sounds like a lot of money, but this is for the whole state of Indiana, and in some uneasy and unknown fiscal and financial times for the country. We have about $1.4 billion that's not earmarked for something else. We have in the neighborhood of $5 billion in total reserve. But there are three accounts that we have earmarked as sort of the Medicaid Reserve Fund, which is basically if we run into problems with the federal government, we are on the hook to pay medical bills if doctors and hospitals don't get paid. And so we hold back money for Medicaid Reserve Account. And then tuition support reserve account, there's about $1 billion in K-12 schools funding. So if we run into hard times, we want to make sure that schools get reimbursed and get paid for their expenses. And so you take those three accounts away from that nearly $5 billion, and that leaves us with just a little more than $1 billion in reserve. And so when we talk about how much money we have a lot of money, but we have a savings account also, and just like you do. So you have a handout that looks like this, basically the latest update from the Senate. I just want to talk a little bit about Senate bill, and we'll take a look at these. These are not in order on this handout. Senate bill 1, 2, 3, and 4 are priority bills from the Senate. Senate bill 1 has to do with mental health. We have a mental health crisis in the state, more suicides than ever before. Schools are dealing with kids with a lot of trouble and a lot of problems that kids are having in school due to mental health. There's just a crazy time due to the pandemic and other issues that folks have dealt with. Mental health is a top priority. One of the problems we have is we don't have enough workers in mental health, therapists and family counselors to do all the work that needs to be done. And so we have legislation to provide reciprocity with other states that if you have certification and license as a family therapist or psychiatrist or psychologist in another state, we grant the reciprocity so you don't have to go through that long process of getting recertified in the state of Indiana. But it's going to take some money. You can throw all the money in the world at this, but it doesn't fix the problem. So we want to be very cautious and we don't pull money out of the great. Senate Bill 2 is of particular interest to farmers, I think, because it allows for youth to take advantage of the excess in property taxes that you pay but you're not able to deduct on your federal return. Because there's a limit on the amount of property tax that you can deduct up to $10,000 off of your federal return. This will allow for what's called PTED, pass-through entity tax, which means that we can just change some language on our end at the state level that allows you to go back to January 1st of 2022 and take advantage of that federal law that lets you take the full deduction for your property taxes that you paid on your federal return. It really works for small business, sub-S, LLCs, and partnerships. So most of you are probably organized in that fashion as a farm. So you need to check with your accountant. We're fast-tracking that bill. It will be on third reading in the Senate on Monday. It will immediately go over to the House, to these guys, and we have an agreement with the House and with the governor's office that we move that bill along as fast as we can. So the folks who are filing their 22 return in 23 will be able to pick up that deduction that accounts to that and applies to. It's about $56 million in federal tax savings to local businesses. So we're pushing that to move as fast as we can. We work closely with the CPA Society, the small CPA group, the small CPA group in the state, with the Department of Revenue to get the language where we can limit it and should apply through the Senate on Monday, and then we'll send it over to the House, and we'll go to work in the House, and hopefully by the end of February we'll have a signed bill with the governor. Senate Bill 3 is my bill, which calls for the formation of a state and local income tax commission. It's a 2-year program to take a look at all taxes that you pay out there, the whole tax structure for the state of Indiana, to make sure that people are being treated fairly and equitably on the taxes that you pay, from property tax up to sales tax, corporate tax, individual income tax. One of the goals that the Indiana Senate has is that we take away individual income tax and taken off the books in Indiana. That's especially important to sub-S, partnerships, and sole proprietorships, because you're paying tax on those at the individual level. So if we do away with that, basically it becomes a huge attraction to the state to get people to come to Indiana and get people that are here to stay here and to stop all those people who go to Florida to pay zero income tax. Excited about that. We've got good support over in the House running as well already, and we're looking forward to that. So I'll stop there. I'll let you guys have a
Yeah, I forgot to introduce Steve Gustus from Representative Tim Banks' office. So if you have federal questions afterwards, you can corner him.
He'll handle all the questions that you have.
We're going to make all these federal issues. Okay, good morning. For those of you who have not met, I'm Matt Lehman from Fort Indiana. This is the district. After district, we have picked up the 4 townships across South Jay County. My district used to go up into Allen County. I had Monroeville, Oakland, in that area. I will say this, I think that district, I love that district, but I'm looking forward to this area. Partly because it fits better, I think, geographically, and just, it's a very farm-driven. Everything I had in Allen County was always Fort Wayne versus us. We don't have that here. We have everybody working together, and I think we have a good, it's going to be a good district. Excuse me, I'm coming off and talking a lot yesterday, so, and I was at the Purdue game Wednesday night and screamed a lot. Hope I can scream a lot today. I will say this, I've been asked to, I use Purdue's name. I'm a Purdue guy, but I've sent 2 of my 3 daughters through IU, so I've spent more money at IU, just have more loyalty to Purdue. Then I have a daughter with Ball State, so I could care less about Ball State.
Let me interrupt. For those that don't know Matt, Matt and I have been in the legislature for the same amount of time, and Matt is the #2 guy in the House of Representatives. So you've got great representation here in Jay County with Matt Lehman. So that means you can lean on him.
Have a few people already. That's good, and my door's always open if you're in need to come and find me. Yeah, I've had the privilege to serve as a majority leader since 2015, so I'm honored to do that. Just a couple of things. JD, who sits on Ways and Means, probably the biggest committee, the most important committee we have. He'll talk a little more maybe about the budget stuff. I've always told people we're committed to a structurally balanced budget. When I say that, the key word to me is structural. I came out of county government, and I tell people, I always wondered why there were years we got our disbursement in July and not in June, we were supposed to. And what I found out is the way you balance your budget by the end of June is you just don't pay your bills. Okay, that looks like you have more money in the bank than you really do, and you can say, look, our budget's balanced, and then after the first of the year, you're in the next budget, and you're starting off in the hole. We don't do that. We said we're gonna operate like you have to operate, and that is structurally balanced. You gotta pay your bills, makes you not enough money to pay your bills and not collect more than we should. That's gonna be an issue this year. I know we really have some health issues in the state of Indiana. Travis touched on the mental health. We're dealing with that on our side, with putting people where they need the most help. Right now, where people with mental health is ending up is in jail. They'll sit in there for months sometimes, and they do not belong in the jail. So we're getting them out of the jails into the places that can help them, and I think that's a real big plus. We also have high reimbursement costs in Indiana, some of the highest in the nation. So we're looking hard, we have been for the last several years. Why are our reimbursement to hospitals higher? Because ultimately a high reimbursement to them means a higher premium to you. And so we've really got to get a control of that. So we've got a couple bills moving that deal with trying to lower those. We've already got the hospital's attention, which is they've agreed to put a flat, no growth in their charges until we get to the national average. Nothing that's firm yet, but I think that's where they're going to be. Now we got to work on the insurance industry that says when that happens, those monies have to pass back through to the rate payer, to the premium payer. So I think we're going to get in a good place on that as well. We have, there's a couple of our priority bills. We have a workforce bill. We have a lot of people who are going to enter the workforce post-high, and so they'll go into the workforce early. We want them to get credit hours towards their graduation for that, and we think that's another good path to add for our kids in school. Energy, we have some very transitional issues across Indiana. Energy is one of those, and I say transitional in that we have to be able to embrace new technologies, but there have to be reasons we embrace new technologies. And so we've said we want to make sure that our energy in the state of Indiana, our usage is, number one, reliable. I tell people, when you flip on a switch, you want power to come on. You don't want to make sure, only if the wind blows or the sun shines will you have power. You have to have a reliable grid. Two, it has to be sustainable, has to continue on, and if that means we have to pivot and change some of those levers here, knobs there, or twist, make sure we have a sustainable energy. Has to be affordable, and it has to be resilient, and it has to be, and the last pillar is environmentally stable. We don't want to do anything that's going to really threaten the land and the waters. So energy is a big issue. Probably 10 years ago, we had some of the middle to the lower energy costs in the United States. Now we're in the top 5 or 6. So we really have to address that, both not only just for the general consumers' homes and farms, but also for commercial. Outside of that, being in the position I'm in as majority leader, I get to have conferences and discussions about a lot of issues, broad issues. We have a lot of issues around education. It is the biggest taker of money out of our budget, or user of money out of our budget, about 50%. I said that this morning in a meeting, and someone came back afterwards and said, that includes universities as well, correct? And I said, no, if you add secondary education, you're up at about 60-some% of the budget goes to education. So it is a big, big piece, and JD can talk more about that. It's a big, big piece of the budget. But also in education, we have issues swirling around what's happening in our schools. Let's be honest, there's issues around gender identity. I just talked to a teacher this morning who said, I'm being told by my administration if I don't address someone by the pronoun they want, that I can be disciplined for that. That does not, in my opinion, that does not belong in the public schools. Okay? How you live your life post-adulthood, I could care less. You make those decisions on your own. But when you've got kindergartners and first graders who are coming in and saying, this is the pronoun I prefer, I don't think that it should fall to the teacher to be dismissed or disciplined by not maybe identifying them as the right one. So we have a couple of bills that deal with that. The whole deal of gender transitioning and surgical procedures. We want to make sure we have safeguards around that too. Again, if you're an adult, do what you want. The government shouldn't control you as an adult, what you do with your life. But as a minor, we've got to have some controls and restraints around that. So that you can get some issues around that as well. I tell people I'm in the insurance business, so I always used to carry some insurance bills. No one ever asked me about my insurance bills. I don't know why. I think they're very nice bills. They're very important bills, but they're absolutely the most boring things anyone will ever read or talk about. So I get to stay below the radar on those. Outside of that, I know I've had some questions from some people on where are we at with the bill we passed this summer on the abortion issue. The court has taken that up. We're waiting to see how the court decides that before we take action so we can respond accordingly. So a lot of people may have questions about that, and then we'll see where that goes. The big issue for me, and I know there's not a specific bill going anywhere, but being from this area, being from southern Adams County, we've really got to get our hand on rural broadband. When you look at these areas, no longer, and I come out of a family that were farmers. It's not like my grandpa's farm. It's no longer a ledger sheet and a pencil that my grandpa was going through some old papers that my grandpa's, and he was writing down everything he planted that spring, and he listed up his equipment, which is about a half a page tractor, wagon, like 5 things he used. Today it's become so much more sophisticated. High-tech business is what agriculture has become. And with that comes technology of broadband. So we've really got to ramp this up. We've really got to get this in a good place. I think where we picked up some allies, and now it's waned maybe a little bit, was during COVID and the e-learning. because it pushed them into, well, you know, we had a problem. Some of these kids aren't getting internet service to do their e-learning. Duh, I've been saying that for years, but now it took a crisis to raise that bar. I hope we're addressing that. We know the budget has some issues around that, but we're gonna parlay every dollar we can into water expansion real broadly. With that, I'll turn it over to JD. Happy to answer any questions.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm JD Prescott, State Representative for 33. So I currently serve on the Ways and Means, Judiciary, and Agriculture committees in the House. So Ways and Means Committee, the first part of session here, with the budget being on the House side, the first half of session, that's taken up the majority of my time on my committee load. We have finished up budget hearings with all of the departments. So I'm just going to kind of touch on some of the bigger topics within the budget that's catching attention this cycle. Obviously, education being the largest pool of funds from our state budget, with 50% going to K-12. We're looking at the budget that's been proposed by the governor has $1 billion increase into the education fund, 6% first year, 2% second year. And then also we are looking at textbook fees and getting those textbooks being paid for, so not passing that charge on to parents. Glad you're happy about that one.
My thing is because public education, you have to be there, and then parents that can't pay possibly can be sued for the textbook fees, and I just blows my mind.
So, yeah, so that's something we're planning on addressing this year. It's in the governor's proposed budget. We're looking at that. When I say textbook fees, just so everyone's clear, we're talking all fees that are so it's not just textbooks anymore. It's the rights to the digital copybooks, the Chromebooks, that's considered in that. But it does get a little complicated though, talking with Dr. Jenner, our Secretary of Education. She really doesn't have a true grasp of what all fees are passed on to parents. That's not something the state's ever collected. Some schools charge different fees than others. So part of the process is going to be, we're really going to, in the budget, we're going to have to do our best to try and identify all of these schools are charging. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but also make sure that we are collecting the data at the same time. So in future budgets, we can be even more accurate on making sure that we are getting all of those fees taken care of. So that's kind of the curveball out of I didn't think about it much until Dr. Jenner brought that to my attention. One of the other big items in the budget, I'm sure something we've seen on the news, the Public Health Commission has a pretty large request in the budget. It's actually a 29-time increase in public health funding. And I want to start off by saying that I do think there are some things that we can do to improve public health. Growing government by 29 times is not, I just have a hard time with that. I have a hard time growing government in general, but especially 29 times. So I think there's some legitimate issues that we need to address in public health, especially when we're talking about EMS services, making sure, especially out in rural areas where we have further distance to hospitals, making sure that those EMS services are adequately funded, have the supplies that they need. But 29 times, I say a lot of heartburn on that one, especially when you look at it. One of the comments that was made in committee was more dollars always leads to more positive outcomes. Well, then I looked at the same charts that they're presenting to us in the Ways and Means Committee and just broke it down. Okay, let's look at our state dollars. We have the information right here in front of us. And you look at the county by county. Shelby County pays the least per person. Marion County pays the most per person. And you're talking a huge gap. Marion County is over $80 per person that they spend on public health. Shelby County is around $1.80, maybe $1.82, somewhere in that range per person. So a huge gap. Okay, then let's look at their same slides that they were using with the life expectancy charts. Which county has the higher life expectancy? Shelby County, who's spending the least amount per person. So then their answer to that was, well, there's more to it than just, well, exactly, that's my point. There's a lot more to it. To me, it comes back down to personal responsibility. I know hating math is completely unhealthy, but it sure is tasty. So I'm going to eat it, right? So, I mean, we all make conscious choices daily. That's why anybody in the room with gas is smoking healthy. Everybody's going to say no, but there's still people that smoke. I mean, I'll do any of that, but, I mean, there's people that do it, so it's a personal decision, personal responsibility in some cases. There's just some things out there, how much money you throw at it, unless somebody wants to change their behaviors and their patterns, it's not gonna happen. So that's gonna be an ongoing discussion. I honestly don't know what the right answer is on what the amount of public health funding should be at this point. That's something that we're gonna continue to listen to opinions and data and see. So I'm sure there will be an increase in public health funding in the House Republican budget here in a couple of weeks. I honestly don't know what that number is going to be yet. We're still debating that. Another bill in Ways and Means Committee that's probably going to hear about a lot here in the next couple of weeks, especially as everybody gets the property tax bills, is we have a property tax relief package that's being proposed by Chairman Thompson, and it would constitutionally cap on homestead property at 1%. We are looking at dropping that rate to 0.9. We still be within the constitutional threshold, 0.9% on a homestead property, and then stair-stepping that up back up to the 1% that's current law now is for a 4-year period. One of the things that I want to make clear, because there was some noise the other day in Ways and Means Committee saying we are cutting funding to local governments. No, we are not by doing this. Local governments would still see an increase of funding. They would not see a negative increase in funding, but they would still receive an increase in funding. So it's not cutting, it's just, it would just be, you're cutting the increase, not cutting the current. So they would still be receiving an increase in funding. I've looked at all the numbers for all of our local units of government, and every single local unit of government within the House district would still be receiving an increase in funding with this package going through. I have all those numbers. If anyone wants more details on that, that I can get more specific. But I don't have it with me today, but if you want to follow up, I can get more specific on that. Some of the bills that I'm working on, about House Bill 1141. This was my version of property tax relief that I had, and which I believe was on that one with Chairman Thompson. So this one probably won't be. What I filed was a 5% cap on the assessment year over year with no improvements made on the property. So if you go back and look at 20-year average, home valuation growth year over year is between 3 and 5%, varies slightly depending on the county. So I went on the higher end of that at 5%. And what I was trying to do is just give some consistency to that. That way it's still going up, but that way when you see normal years like we had this last year, where you see a giant spike in home values going up all at once, basically forces that to be spread out. So that was my take on that. Where it looks like we're going to go with a different approach. I also have House Bill 1142. It has to do with law enforcement reporting. So this came to me from some local law enforcement. Just to clarify in the code that the charges that law enforcement agencies can charge for body camera footage can include the labor hours to redact and the labor hours for administrative review on that. There are some agencies, some departments that have had quite a few basically frivolous requests for body camera footage, and they're stuck paying labor fees. Or you as a taxpayer, you're really stuck paying labor fees for all that. And not being able to charge it that. But it doesn't change. There's a $150 cap in current law that can be charged for body camera. The fees to collect the body camera footage are passed on to the person requesting that. So I'm not changing that $150 cap. It's still in place. Just clarify that those labor hours can be included. That's on third readings on Monday. House Bill 1143. That's a more fun one for me. It officially designates Indiana as the Hoosier state, but that really wasn't the intent when I fully drafted it. When I started to draft it, I really wanted to recognize Harry Hoosier as the reason we are Hoosiers in Indiana, why we're known as Hoosiers. And for those of you that don't know the story of Harry Hoosier, he was an African-American preacher back in the early days of our country. He traveled preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he did most of his preaching in what is known today as Indiana and parts of western Ohio. But in this area, and the followers of his teachings were called Hoosiers. And so you'd be out in town, and it was actually kind of meant more of a derogatory term at the time, for some of the small teaching, but they would be called Hoosiers. So I just want to recognize Harry Hoosier for passing on that legacy, and I think it's important for our youth to know not only was our country founded in faith, but our state was founded in faith. We also have House Bill 1144, which is state employment of probation officers. So currently, probation officers are they are technically, based on a court opinion or a Supreme Court opinion from February of 2022, they are technically state employees, but they're paid for by the county or the city in some cases, but mostly by the county. Judges appoint or determine the number of probation officers, and so the county councils have no say so in the government funding on what that line item is out of budget for probation officers. They're mandated the salary, the state mandates the salary, and the judges determine how many. So with them being technically state employees working underneath the judges, which are state employees, and the state mandating the salary, I would like to move those to state paid for. I figure if we're mandating the salary as a state, we should be paying for it. It is a $111 million fiscal impact, and there's actually some more discussion taking place, and there's other court positions that are in the same boat. So after talking with Chairman McNamara, the committee that I've been assigned to, looks like we may move this over to a summer study committee and ask the legislative council to assign this a summer study committee to give it a little bit more discussion, more thorough way to see what is the best way to proceed with this moving forward. At 1144, it was a Delaware County courts bill. It passed, moved into another bill. School board elections, House Bill 1428, which is a school board transparency. It would, the bill is, in its current form, it would move school board members to the exact same election process as every other level. That'd be primary, general election. I am working on an amendment. I've been negotiating with the School Board Association and some other groups to take this down to a local decision. So a local school corporation would be able to decide whether they want to move to that primary general election process or just do a general election designation. And they could do that in one of two ways. Either the school board could adopt an ordinance to move forward with that for their school corporation, or the voters could do it via referendum. I believe that one's going to be heard soon. There's a Senate bill that was heard that was very similar that was just heard last week. 1429, broadband. Representative Lehman talked about the importance of broadband. I share those concerns. This is has to do with, really, this issue came out of Randolph County, but it would affect statewide. So down in Randolph County with the wind and solar companies, we've got some conduit that's buried in the same utility easements as the wind and solar providers. But to actually put that broadband, or put the fiber in for broadband, county would have to get two comparables and have appraisal done on that to be able to use that easement. Well, the problem is it's hard to find. You can't really go out and find two comparables to a little strip of an easement for another company to use. For exactly what they're doing, it hasn't really been done. So that the comparables aren't there. So I'm striking that where you have to, if they cannot come up with the comparables for the appraisal, then that requirement would be waived and actually be able to proceed as is. And it also, one thing that does need to change, it has the currently electric company would have to notify the landowners. I do have to move that over to where the broadband provider would have to notify the landowners, so the use of that easement. Have a social media bill. It is a two-part bill. The first part of it is really not needed now. I had it drafted before this change was made to ban TikTok from government takeover. That basically have it just in the final form creates a tax on social media. And that would go towards a fund for cyberbullying on online harassment. And I'm usually not a tax increase guy, but when I look at society, and I think a lot of problems come from social media, and these social media companies are using all of our infrastructure, and they're really not paying any taxes here in the state of Indiana. So I think it's a fair tax to be assessed. The way it would work is 7% sales tax on ad revenue generated via social media, and then a $1 per user tax, and that would apply to any social media company with more than 1 million users. And then I also just passed last week House Joint Resolution 1, good for the line of succession bill. So what it does is it strikes the state superintendent of public instruction from the line of succession for governor. So sounds like a repeat of it is. I passed it last year as well, but being a constitutional amendment has to pass 2 separately elected general assemblies and then be on the ballot. And so state superintendent of public instruction no longer exists. Now it's the Secretary of Education, so it went from an elected position to an appointed position. So I'm just clarifying, we do not have a pact in the line of succession. We're an appointed individual to act as governor versus, and it should all stay elected. To be in that line of succession. With that, I think we're ready for questions.
Well, since it's my shot, I'm going to ask the first question. Senator Holdman, talking about reducing or eliminating income tax in the state of Indiana, and I'm not against reduced tax dollars. What's going to replace that source of income?
Well, that's one thing we're going to look at, Barry. What other states have done, for instance, in Tennessee, there are 7 states that have no individual income tax: Tennessee, Florida, Texas, Nevada, Montana or Wyoming, the state of Washington, and either New Hampshire or Vermont. We're going to take a look to see what those states have done to offset that loss of revenue if they did it. What Tennessee did was allow for an increase in the sales tax on service. That means not everybody with 3 knives all at the same time or sharp scissors. If you go to get a haircut, you have to pay sales tax for the service of the haircut. Right now, when you go to get a haircut, you pay $10, $12, whatever your barber charges you. There'd be a tax on that service. Right now, if we put a sales tax on service for everything, and sales tax everything except for groceries and medical care and prescription drugs, and left our rate the same at 7%, it would be a wash. That would raise about $6.5 billion that we need to take our individual income tax to zero. So that's just one option that we have available to us, and that's what other states have done. Representative Lehman can tell you he has a daughter in Nashville, and Nashville, I think, in Tennessee, they allow for individual units of government to have their own sales tax rate.
Yeah, Nashville's is, with state and Nashville's about almost 10.5% sales tax.
But there's no individual
No,
income tax.
which is a benefit for her living in Nashville, not a benefit for her dad when he visits Nashville. That's why we have to have, I think, that no look the word for good question. I think that's why some of the reasons for the condition.
When you take a look at some of the national groups, the Tax Foundation, the Youth Foundation, ALEC, some of the national groups for legislators and for just tax policy, they'll tell you that having a zero individual income tax is a huge attraction to your state. To get people to move here, higher paying jobs because people are not paying the individual income tax rate. And one of my biggest concerns is keeping our young people here. You send your kids away to Purdue, they get a good education, and then they leave the state of Indiana. We need to do things to keep our kids here so we have a future tax-based, and because we want grandchildren to be here in our state. So.
While you're talking about sales tax, and I talked to Representative Prescott about this, what about the sales tax on 501c3s? He said you're working on that.
Travis has
Oh, the not-for-profits.
Not-for-profits.
I've got a bill that would tax not-for-profit hospitals. It just happens to be unconscionable for you to have $6 billion invested on Wall Street on the backs of your patients. And they keep telling me that it's because they need good credit ratings for bonding purposes. My office, our fiscal office, has actually checked with the bonding rating agencies, and they cannot back that story up. And I think it's just a bunch of baloney. If you want my personal opinion, I won't use the other word I was thinking of. It's just not fair to the patient to be charging what we do.
Do you have anything in that, though? I think the question is more along the 501c3s and local. And the local, not for
That
profit.
can eliminate the sales tax
On the sales tax, remember we had the sale and the tickets, I mean.
Oh, that piece. I've got language to basically take that away completely. We tried to clarify it and eased up on not-for-profits, on charging sales tax. That was your question, I'm sorry.
Like the Lions Club and Optimists are having to pay sales tax.
Well, they didn't know they were supposed to until we changed the law to make it easier on them, and then they found out that they were supposed to be paying it, because nobody's paying sales tax if you're a not-for-profit. I had language just to take that and just wipe it off the books completely so that no not-for-profit is liable for any sales tax for fundraisers. You know, the biggest problem are schools. The schools, most organizations that raise money for schools have no idea they're supposed to be paying sales tax. You've got the PTO and the PTA, you've got band boosters, you've got athletic boosters, you've got all these different organizations, you've got Girl Scout cookie sales not charging sales tax. They probably sell more than anybody, thousands and thousands of dollars, and they should be collecting sales tax and remitting that to the state of Indiana. They don't know they're supposed to be doing that, and we're just going to, hopefully, we'll just wipe that off the books and say, if you're a not-for-profit doing fundraising, you don't owe any sales tax at all in the state of Indiana. So I'm sorry I misunderstood.
No.
But it was nice to hear that about non-profit hospitals. So, questions from the floor?
I'm going to continue with your question. So, you're going to start charging services, even though, so what about us as farmers that do provide services to people? We're going to start getting taxed more than?
Well, business to business, typically business to business is not taxed for sales tax purposes. So you buy a piece of equipment, if you're a business and the business is purchasing it, there would be no sales tax associated with that purchase. Keep in mind, we are not going to do this just as a blanket statement. We're going to study to see what we need to do. It's going to be a 2-year study, so we're a long way out. We will not put anything into effect until we have paid down our pre-96 teacher retirement liability, which is in the neighborhood of $4 to $5 billion. And so until that's done, and our goal is 5 to 7 years out, so we've got a long ramp to get to that time frame.
So in Ohio, you have to charge taxes on the service we provide people, as far as a tree service or planting trees, that all has to be taxed, which does deter people from doing certain things because of the extra cost already added in.
Well, it takes an educated taxpayer, and you guys are smarter than the average buyer out there with the taxes that you pay because it's your business. So if you're not paying any individual income tax, depending upon where you break out on your net income level, on your API, on your tax level, it's going to be an advantage to you not to have to pay any individual income tax. So that's what we're going to take a look at. Any questions?
I'm curious of the surveys you sent out, how did those come back in the results?
Yeah, good.
I was just gonna say, mine, should be sitting on my desk Monday when I get back. My staff let me know that they were ready, but I haven't actually looked at them, and I'm gonna go through them Monday.
Mine should have been published last week in my weekly newsletter that I send out. If you didn't get that, let me know and we'll get a copy to you. But we sent those results out. We had about 1,200 respondents that came back, and we continue to get responses in every week. And we keep trying to add those and update the numbers with that. But I have a conservative district, and so there are no surprises. We actually do it while we're looking at
And I tell people a lot of times, questions in the survey are not issues that I'm in favor of. I just want to see where the pulse is. So we've had education, some tax questions. The one that surprised me the most on this survey is, since I first got elected, I asked one simple question: do you support the legalization of marijuana? Which I do not support. So, you know, I don't support it, but I was curious what the district was. That came back the first couple of years, like 70-30 opposed. That has literally almost flipped. It's now almost 60-40 in favor. So I changed it this year to just medical marijuana. Because if we're going to have that discussion, I've been on the public policy committee for 10 years. I've heard every debate there is around marijuana. I'm still not convinced we need to legalize it. I do see some benefits of the medical side under very controlled situations, but there's federal issues that are out there, we can't do it. But it came back, when I asked the question about do you support medical marijuana, it was back to almost 50-50. So it's almost like more people support the legalization of marijuana than support medical marijuana. So that one perplexes me because, and that's an issue, it didn't come up here yet, but it's an issue out there that, you know, I think Travis said we both came in at the same time. You know, I think, I look back, I think in 2009, first session I was there, I think there were 2 marijuana bills filed. And I think this year there are almost 14 or 15 different marijuana bills filed. It's an issue we're going to have to address. All the states around us, other than Ohio, have recreational and medical marijuana. Ohio just has medical. One of the questions I've posed is this. So I live in Rockford, Ohio. I work in Decatur, Indiana at Rev. And I have a prescription for medical marijuana in Ohio. I have an accident at work at Rev. I get drug tested. It's found that I have marijuana in my system. I lose my job and I lose my work comp benefits. Because it's illegal in Indiana, you get no benefit if you're under, you get fired because it's a legal drug. I'm on a legal prescription, but I'm losing my job and not getting benefits in Indiana. So there's an issue there I think we have to address. Is I prefer they not come to work the marijuana in our system, but we do have a situation where we're going to put people, because of policy, in the lurch. The problem with the whole marijuana issue to begin with is the feds have it as a Schedule I drug. A Schedule I drug on a federal level means nobody can touch it, you should never use it, look at it, it should never even be mentioned. It is the most horrible thing possible. Schedule II drugs are cocaine and heroin. Okay, that means you can test them, use them for medications, you can do a bunch of stuff with them. I'm not sure why marijuana is one, but there's other drugs too. But until the feds moved off of the one, you really can't touch it. But the problem is 36 states have said, we don't care. We're going to do what we want to do and make it legal, and the feds have done nothing about it. So you have this conflict now, and this is where, if you have any marijuana questions, ask you justice. Okay, this is a federal issue, in my opinion, but it is something that we've got to, it's not going to go away. Law enforcement doesn't like it, the legalization, they said it's a gateway drug. I believe that. I believe when you catch some of these people, the first thing they'll tell you is, I smoke marijuana. Other people will tell you, I've smoked marijuana my whole life and I've never had any problems. That may be why you smoke marijuana. You don't remember anything. So it is something I think we're going to have to address. I mean, we did address this a couple years ago because growing up in Bern, very conservative town, everything else, everything around hemp was bad. Okay, because hemp is marijuana, right? Then we should find out that hemp is actually a crop. There's a lot of benefits to hemp. It's the part of the hemp plant that is the marijuana with high THCs, etc. that are the problem. So we did change some laws to allow hemp farming because I think it is a good crop for Indiana farmers. So it is a balance, but we just got to find the right place. Anyway, that's where I'm at on the issue of it.
I have legislation, I didn't mention this, and I should have because Farm Bureau was interested in what we're doing with this. I think it's 295. I have trouble remembering my own bill numbers, but if you look up under my name, it has to do with hemp flour. There's a product that is produced from the hemp flour, Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, which is sold as gummies, tinctures, closed vape systems, and ointment that are sold currently in shops and you can buy CBD products, CBS and CBD products in their stores now too, but that is 0.3% of lower THC, which is the cannabinoid market agreement, it has to be below that level. Currently, you are prohibited from moving that across state lines. I have legislation that will set up a framework that if we ever do legalize marijuana in the state, the framework will be there, but it has to do with Delta 8, Delta 9, and Delta 10 firmly, and it takes the prohibition off of transport of that, and that's what Farm Bureau is interested in. And we have a big meeting coming up Monday in my office with folks from Farm Bureau, the Prosecuting Attorney's Council, the Indiana State Police, and Department of Revenue to talk about what we can do to lessen the penalty, if not take the penalty away altogether, for transport of hemp flower if you're a licensed processor and a licensed grower. Because most of our growers have just gotten out of business because they can't ship it out of state. And they can only ship it within state. That business is about a $2 billion business in the state of Indiana, whether you know it or not. And so that product, the Delta 8 and the variety of Delta products are being manufactured in Indiana and shipped out of state. But the hemp flower in its original form, we have controls on that, and we need to lighten those controls up to benefit the farmer. And so we're working on getting that done.
Other questions?
So with it being a budget year, there's a line item budget that the ISDA has proposed that has me very, very concerned. And it's $1.2 million for the grain buyers and warehousing licensing agency. So I'll refer to them as the agency because that's a mouthful. But my concern there, as Matt and Travis probably know, is the agency with the Salamone grain failure that happened coming up on 3 years ago now is still ongoing with a group of them in litigation. And I've got, there was folks that I've worked with that they requested the invoices from Barnes and Thornburg, who are representing the agency through this litigation. And they've spent what we just invoices they got, $316,000 just over in litigation fighting the farmers in this that are, as you will know, are fighting for answers on as to why that grain failure date was where it was and why the agency did not or continued to license them years after they showed insolvency. So my concern is if we're going to give the agency $1.2 million, you know, they say it's going to be for X, Y, Z, but that gives them that much more money to continue to fight these guys that are already probably spent hundreds of thousands in out of their own pocket in attorney fees to fight for what's right, because this is a state agency that we all depend on licensing all the grain elevators in the state. And when they say the license is good, we take that as, well, we're good to sell there. And then there's grain failure, you're out a ton of money. So that concerns me that if that gets passed through, that they're going to continue to fight until farmers give up. And then the backside of that is who's holding them accountable for not doing their job correctly? I mean, can the legislation make an oversight committee or something that looks into, this agency that helps make sure they're doing their job? Because if they've got a lot of discretion, what good are they to us?
Well, we have the power of the purse. And I serve also, besides being chair of the Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee, I serve on the Appropriations Committee. I got an email just this week from the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and he said, which state agencies do you want to have them personally appear for the Appropriations Committee, my first choice was the Department of Agriculture. And I received all that information last week from the farmer close to me, Linda, got that to me. And so we're poised to ask them some tough questions about why they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for attorney's fees to fight farmers. And it's just not right. Salamone Mills was operating in the red. They were underwater for about 10 years. And as far as I can tell, the Department of Agriculture did not a thing to try to fix that situation. We had legislation last year to try to fix this. And the Lieutenant Governor did nothing to help us out.
And I appreciate you sharing that one, Bill, and unfortunately, that one would have just helped a lot of this had it got through. But I want to make sure that we're not, you guys aren't giving up. I know you put in a lot of time and effort. I just want to voice that to make sure, we feel like this is a huge issue that's still ongoing. And when they asked, and that my understanding, if I listened to the Great Division Board meetings from November, Jordan, he's at the ISBA, I don't know his official title, Jordan Seeger, I think is his name, but he spoke in regards to them asking, this is the first time ever they're going to have a line item appropriations asked for the agency of $1.2 million on top of the $540,000 that they receive in revenue. So, and then they go on to say that, there's small elevators, there's more consolidation they're seeing, and that's happening as years go on, so that's less elevators for them to have to license. $1.2 million, that just seems crazy to me.
Well, the farmer commissioner made a statement publicly that when a farmer sees that license on the wall at the grain elevator, they know that grain elevator is in good standing with the Department of Agriculture, and you can trust them that your grain will be sold and you'll get paid for your grain. Well, that's not true. That's not true. And we just need to stand up for the farmer and do the right thing.
I'd like to add just a little bit for people who don't know, Salamone Mills is an elevator that failed. When we sell grain, there's a small portion that comes out of that for this indemnity fund to cover elevators that fail. And the ISDA is in litigation, this $316,000 to try and keep bringing that money to the farmers that is rightfully theirs. That's what we pay it in for. And that's what they're talking about.
There's a federal court case, actually, that a group of farmers has filed a lawsuit in federal court against the indemnity fund itself, and that is still proceeding. And I think they got a good shot at it, to be honest with you.
Well, I hope they do. I feel like they say that they have too much, they've had enough discretion of their own, that you guys make rules and laws for them to abide by, no one's holding them accountable. And in this case, they really weren't, because they continue to issue licenses. And I mean, they're a relatively small elevator, and if this happens to a big one, I mean.
Well, what we were too, there were runners on the brink of that.
Right.
And so, one thing too is, I think where we ended up, and I agree with Senator Holdman, to be honest, but where we ended up was, we're not gonna go backwards, but we're gonna make sure it never happens again. Well, that's all good, but you failed. And there's some accountability to that failure, and I think we still have to work on that. I think that's a core case, because I think we have a good standing. To be honest.
One fellow I talked to, I think I heard $4 million that he lost, one farmer. So, it's not chump change.
No.
And I just want to point out that line item in the budget that you're referring to, that's at this point the governor's proposed
Right.
rate, what they're asking is, we'll be releasing the Ways and Means House Republican budget here in a couple of weeks, or I guess. And it's still, we're still discussing, so.
Okay, well, I hope.
We're still working on it.
Yeah, I'm really considering, and I know I think all will probably receive email from Linda. I mean, these folks have been fighting, and they've got the documents, to prove, and that shows that they failed. I mean, they're not just $316,000 that, the invoices they received, there's a year prior to that, that was only from the end of March of 21. The failures happened in 2020, well, should have happened, well, at least in before. But, so there's a year prior for that first invoice they got, and then they had administrative law judge hearings this past August. Those are not included in this, and that was a 3-day hearing where we had two of the Barnes and Thornburg attorneys there for 3 full days. So you can imagine what kind of cost there is in that. So that's not included in that $316,000. So
I just jotted this down because I don't recall seeing the email. So
okay.
my tab had it, but if you can either resend that or make sure I get it. Okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure to get that. And by all means, please reach out to me or somebody. I mean, we can get you so much information on this. You don't even have to do the research. It's already been done. So, because I know you guys, your time is precious. So whatever we can do to help you out on that. But that's a concern from a farmer and a taxpayer that our tax dollars are going to fight against farmers that are fighting for the answers, the correct answers.
The simplest things that the Department of Agriculture agency can do to audit the grain elevator, apart from pulling all the financials, because those can get complicated for a new auditor. Climb the elevator and look down in to measure the grain in the elevator. If it's raining or it's windy, they just say, well, we'll do that the next time we come back. And I've had auditors who called me and told me that they're sorry they didn't do what they were supposed to have done. They don't work for the agency anymore. They quit because of lack of support from the agency itself. But they didn't do the simplest, easiest things to verify what that elevator was saying was on their books by just climbing the elevator and looking down in the top of the elevator at where the grain was in the elevator, how much was there. They wouldn't even do that, much less take their books and their reports and comb through those for any errors they could see. It's deplorable what they did, and it's just fraud. Yes. State police is doing an investigation as well. They've interviewed me, and I told them that there was malfeasance on the part of the department itself. Don't blame the elevator alone. The agency that was supposed to be monitoring them did their job, and they're to blame as much as anybody.
Speaking of time, how much time do you guys have? You need to go or?
I have to referee.
I got 5 minutes.
Take any question or two, John?
What's the state doing as far as foreign entities buying property in the state?
We had an issue that last year. There was a bill, and you got to be careful on the nuances here because I think we are clear we don't want foreign governments running land. But it's hard to separate that sometimes on who owns what. So, good example is we have a very nice Irish family that bought a farm in Adams County. They now sold it, but I don't want to prohibit foreign people from owning land because they came here and lived here. Now they stay here and they're still part of our community. But we got to be careful that we're not selling land to governmental entities. I think there's already some laws in the books about that. But I don't know if there's a bill moving this year on that. Do you know anything? Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to follow up on that because I'm not sure.
Domain?
What's that?
Eminent domain?
No, that's not so much that. I think it's more. I think there's some things around just government owning of private property. You're going to have some issues with to go through some hoops and ladders. But I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if you guys have discussions through.
That are moving in the culture as forward to them. One is on basically categorizing how land is used in Indiana, how much farmland there is, and there's another one about farmland protection, but there's nothing I don't think about specific foreign ownership.
Yeah,
So that's Kendall's, Kendall has to go around that a little bit. Okay.
yeah, so on
mainly about preserving farmland in Indiana.
Yeah, and the bill that's moving out of those two is, first one you mentioned, of Representative Cobb's, and it, just simply is to identify, actually it's on our sheet here on the back. Yeah, House Bill 1557 was passed out in the Ag Committee, this last week, and any ground that has been, basically going from agricultural land to industrial ground, whatever purposes, just trying to study and identify, we're passing part of agriculture to identify all those land uses. What is this agriculture ground being turned into? Is it going into roads? Is it going into wind, solar? What's it going to? Where's it going? So yes, it doesn't specifically mention anything to do with foreign ownership in that, but if it's going into industrial use, that would maybe we can learn that through that study. Not 100% sure how detailed that would be. One other thing to note too on foreign ownership of ground and property in Indiana. When you look at major corporations that do business here within the state currently, we've got to be careful that you don't throw out some of these businesses too. And the biggest one that I think of in the agriculture sector would be Corteva. Which Corteva now has Chinatown, which was Syngenta. So they would be, if we would just completely ban foreign entities from owning so much ground or so much interest in Indiana, then they would be forced to get rid of that ground as well. And I think we all, pretty much all the farmers in this room, do some sort of Corteva process at some point, or you're aware of that. And the other one thing to note too is some of the livestock facilities have some foreign ownership as well. I don't know the exact number of those, but I do know that there's some livestock facilities. So we just have to be careful in that discussion too, because we want to make sure that we're protecting our ground from foreign governments, like Leader Lehman said, but we also don't want prohibited business that is beneficial to our state.
We have legislation that just came out of committee this week, Senator Garden had, that prohibits state investment dollars for retirement being invested in Chinese Communist Party companies. And believe it or not, we have $1 billion invested in Communist Party companies out of China. And the plan is just to move us out over the next 4 years to get away from any investments and make it from that point forward to invest in Chinese Communist Party investments. So we're trying to clean up. Yeah.
I have one other question. Quickly, you guys both talk about energy. We talked to Matt and Davey both. We have some issues in Jay County in particular with guys that putting solar panels in, selling power back to power grid. I&M is okay, but REMC is not wanting, they're putting up administrative roadblocks. Is there any legislation?
Yeah, so Mr. Holdman brought that to my attention when he was down there today, and we talked to the RMCs this week. I think they've bitten off a little more than they can chew right now. They think it's a very simple certificate of insurance is the answer. I'm in the insurance business, and I told them, I said, here's the problem you have. You're creating an individual to be a corporation. You're telling them they got to act like a corporate entity and pushing energy back to the grid. If you call them that, and there's a legal transaction of those dollars, they are a corporation. So by your asking for that certificate of insurance, you're forcing them to buy commercial insurance. If you call me up today and say, hey, I want to buy insurance, I'm an energy company, the answer is good luck, right? It's going to be very, very expensive. So we have to find a way, and brought to the attention, we have to find a way to make sure that we can let this happen through that personal or farm liability exposure that the insurance industry is going to respond accordingly. To make sure that you're covered to satisfy them at the same time their demands aren't going too far into what they're asking. So I think it really brought to attention the issue, but then when I showed them, and I tell them, if you look at a certificate of insurance, which they hang their hat on, the very first portion that says this is a document only conveying information and has no legal standing. That's what a certificate does. And when I told them that, they're confused. Jimmy said, this means nothing. I said, it means nothing. And they said, well, we have a problem. Yeah, we do. So we got to solve that. So we'll get there. I said, how we're going to get there yet. It's all right.
I appreciate you looking into that for you.
Gary, I have a question, real quick, about your House Bill 1245, 1455, and 1035 concerning township trustees or assessors.
You tell me what the numbers are always.
Okay. The one says requires a township legislative body to approve a claim at a meeting before payment. The next one is to establish a pilot program that provides for merger of townships. And the other one is counties with one or more township assessors, the election board shall place on the 2026 general election ballot, asking whether the office of the assessor shall be abolished or kept.
Okay, the last one, let's go until the meeting moving. That just went through our house, didn't it? So basically, if you remember a couple years ago, they passed legislation that did away with township assessors. They all went to the county assessor. There were still 13 counties that had a township assessor in it. Those are your larger ones, your Gary area, things like that. So what you're seeing now is a true overlap of assessment. And so what we've simply said is, again, should we say get rid of them, put that question to the ballot. So what this says is, the compromise eventually was allowing those entities to decide for themselves when they want to get rid of their township assessor and simply go to a county assessor, like 90, like 85 other counties have already done, or keep it the way it is.
Okay.
That's
So
what all it
basically,
is.
that doesn't pertain to like township trustees that will still have their own.
No.
bodies.
No.
Thank you.
I don't think any of those have to do really with township trustees. I don't think they do anything about the township trustees, other than some education issues in the state board of council.
And I understand the point where you're going, I actually voted no on that one because I'm concerned that it could lead to that this year, so that was why I voted no on that. But the bill as is, I don't think it doesn't go that far yet, but I do have that concern going forward. I want to make sure we preserve our township government.
Appreciate that.
We thank you all for coming. Member Holdman has to leave. I think Matt and Katie may be around for a little bit. If you want to talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of Rudd's Room. If you haven't done so yet, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified of new episodes. If you'd like to see additional content featuring Brandon Rudd, please tune in every Thursday for the live show, The Bastards of Politics, which features Christopher H. Bilbrey, Joshua Civic Duty Kimbrell, and myself. You can also check out the audio-only version of the episodes at thebastards.fireside.fm and anywhere podcasts can be found. Thanks again, and have a great day.